Steps into it. Pass is caught. Diggs! Sideline! Touchdown! Unbelievable! Vikings win it!
Strap yourself in and get ready.
Hey, here we go.
The leaders in fantasy football are incoming, giving you the ultimate insight to help you win your leagues and dominate your mates. You're now listening to the Insight NFL Show with your hosts, Guns and Maverick.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go!
Alrighty, and welcome back to the Insight NFL Show. As always, I am Nathan from Supercoach Guns, and with me is the NFL Maverick. How are you going?
Mate, I just sort of zonked out there for a second. I just forgot we're live. But, mate, I'm going fantastic. I want to just give a quick shout out to the boys in the League of Insight. It's been a good year, 14 weeks in. Your season's done, Guns. That's it.
Helmet of shame.
Probably the only guy that I know that has had Saquon Barkley in their team and missed out on playoffs. I think you're probably one of like 5 people in the world. So, mate, pathetic from you. But we've made it. We're in the playoffs. We finished as the number 1 points for on the league. So probably rightfully so. But the scrape in is just ridiculous.
Yeah, look, I think can you hear me clearly through this? I think you can.
Yeah, you just look like a fucking idiot.
Well, no more than usual, hey? Look, yes, Saquon was a bit grim. Having him and still not making playoffs, that's very grim. I pride myself on excellence here because I had Josh Jacobs as well in this league, let's not forget. What let me down was wide receiver. I had the ghost of Deebo Samuel, and I had Chris Olave, who played like 4 games this year. That was grim. Like, if it wasn't for Darnell Mooney, I wouldn't even be close to the playoffs conversation. There you go. Okay, we're back now. Yeah, so there you go. I'm out of that. Barring there is one situation. Where Cooper Rush scores 45 fantasy points tomorrow.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, the odds of that happening are very slim. Almost as low as the odds of, Josh Allen going and breaking the record for the most fantasy points of all time in the position. Because he did that today. Which I suppose leads us into the game previews, doesn't it? Neat little segue, I reckon. So let's look at the first one, and that would be the Packers and the Lions. Now, 34-31 to the Lions. I liked Josh Jacobs in this one, obviously. 3 touchdowns, 18 carries, 66 yards. It's no receiving work, but he didn't need to do any of that when you score 3 on the ground.
Yeah, it was a ridiculously fun game to watch. I thought this one. Josh Jacobs actually had 4 touchdowns on the day, but one got what got brought back. I think it was Christian Watson might have been holding. I actually can't remember what happened, to be quite honest with you, but it was a offensive passing interference or offensive flag as such, whatever the word is for it. But brought back. So that was number 4 taken off him. But yeah, monster game. But he only had 66 yards on the ground. Just wanted to score for fun, really. That's just what he wanted to do, and did it efficiently too. But yeah, it was all in all, mate. I actually really enjoyed this game. I thought it was fantastic to watch.
Yeah, it was a doozy of a game for Friday lunchtime for us. So that's good for us as viewers. Which meant that because we've had a couple of up and downs with the primetime games we've been given this year. There's been a lot of crappy ones. There's been a few very good ones, mind you, but there's been a lot of crappy ones. I'll tell you what I did find quite weird. That was the distribution across the wide receivers for the Detroit Lions. We look at Amon-Ra St. Brown. He had 5 catches on 6 targets for 43 yards. He had a carry for 10 yards as well, but Jameson Williams had 5 catches for 80 yards. And then, of course, the real wide receiver one at the Detroit Lions, Tim Patrick with 6 catches for 43 yards and 2 touchdowns. I believe it's his first touchdown in like almost 3 years, so good for him, I suppose. But would have been nice if one of them could have gone to Amon Ra.
It's a bit sad, Amon-Ra, the last few weeks, I've thought. Like, we're seeing 7 targets in week 12. Week 13, we're seeing 7 targets again. And in this game, we saw 6 targets. So, mate, he hasn't really eclipsed 12.8. Well, that's his highest score in the last 3 weeks is in PPR is 12.8. So, when you're relying on such a heavily invested piece like Amon-Ra St. Brown, you're hoping you'd be banging at the 20 pluses to either get you into the playoffs, secure you or secure your bye, I suppose, if you play top 6. So, yeah, a bit concerning, mate, especially when his next 3 games going into the playoffs are going to be Buffalo, Chicago, and San Fran. So, generally, fairly good secondaries there. So, a little bit concerning for Amon-Ra St. Brown coming into the pointy end.
Yeah, I mean, this is not the sort of form you want from him leading into fantasy playoffs. Of course, you're still going to start him because it's Amon-Ra St. Brown. He could go bonkers in any given game. There was a fair bit of reliability, as always, from the Detroit running backs. I mean, 19.4 and 19.3 for Montgomery and Gibbs, respectively. Although neither of them were overly efficient on the ground, they both did a bit of receiving work and they both scored. So, you like, you can't sit one. They're both automatically every week starters, in my opinion, right now, and I think that'll continue through to the throughout the fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, they're both fine. I mean, Jameer Gibbs makes up for it in his passing work. He doesn't get the carries, but in this game, he actually out-carried David Montgomery 15 of 14, which I found quite surprising. Both of them couldn't get anything going on the ground at all. Both had 51 yards and 43 yards. They probably averaged about 3 yards per carry each, so nothing too ridiculous. But yeah, the passing work was when they really started to dominate. And obviously, Jameer Gibbs had a receiving touchdown to go with it too. So, mate, these guys, yeah, it's crazy to say that you can start 2 Detroit running backs and they can churn out some really, really good results for you in any given week. I don't think they've ever really had a bad week this year. It wouldn't be many of them. But yeah, pretty crazy to think that's where they're at as a duo where you can just start them and play them and rely on them every week.
Here you go. David Montgomery has gone below double digits, once this season, and that was back in
Yeah.
week 7. And then as for Jameer Gibbs, he has not gone below double digits at all this year. This is in PPR for both of them, but you get the point. Very reliable and every week starters. Someone who is certainly not an every week starter and is probably not startable right now is Jaden Reed. The target share is all over the shop. The snap share's decreasing. He had 1 target for 0 yards. Who's the wide receiver one? Because like Christian Watson could be, but he's really just a deep threat. Jaden Reed's not doing anything in the he's not doing anything, period. And Dontavian Wicks is just covering for Romeo Dobbs. So is Dobbs actually the wide receiver one on this team?
Look, you can't really. It's been an ongoing problem all year. I mean, Jaden Reed in himself, he's getting a lot of cardio in, especially in motion too. He loves moving around in motion and still can't get any sort of work going for himself. Very, very inconsistent where this is going. Mate, the only thing I'd say that's consistent at tight end is Tucker Kraft, and that's he's been churning out some good results. Seems like he scores nearly every week too. So he's probably the only reliable option outside of Josh Jacobs on this team.
Yeah, and like the last 3 weeks, he's gone 10.6, 13.8, 13.1. Like at tight end, that's very solid.
Yeah.
Particularly for someone who may have worked his way back onto the waivers at certain points in this season, depending if you're in a redraft league or not.
I think
But
that week he had a donut was probably the week he might
yeah,
have hit the waiver wire.
yeah. So if you've got on that, then I think you'll be pretty sweet. But for now, like he's a starter for me.
But
I
even
don't know what. Sorry, yeah, you go.
even even Jordan Love, mate, like he hasn't really been that good. I
No,
think he's been okay, but like we're talking fantasy here, right? And Jordan Love, what is he coming into the week? He'd be what QB 15. I'm guessing right
I'll
now.
have a look.
I'm guessing he'd be QB 15. It'd have to be something around the mark because he's missed a few games. He hasn't really been that good. Very inconsistent play. The wide receivers haven't really dominated, so I'd imagine he'd be pushing.
Oh, mate, QB 15 on the dot.
Yeah, there you go. So that was a lucky guess. I didn't have that pre-planned, um, but yeah, you know what I mean. Like he has missed a few games. Might I add? Like how many games has he missed? Two, one, two.
I believe two.
So he missed two the first week till week 3. So yeah, all in all, mate, he plays those games. Let's say he scores 15 points in those games, maybe I said 10 to 15 points in those 2 games. He probably goes maybe borderline top 10, which I guess is okay. But yeah, it probably hasn't been the Jordan Love season that I've anticipated he was going to have. I thought he was going to be pushing top 5 again.
Yeah, like if you just give him the points that Malik Willis scored, so that's 38.4 points in the 2 games that he started in relief of Jordan Love, it takes his score to 237, which puts him at quarterback 8 on the year. So sure, he's probably been there or thereabouts, but that's been elevated by, I'm gonna say, a lot of a very pass-heavy offense at times, and it could have been even bit higher if he wasn't throwing as many turnovers as what he had been for most of this year. Um, Now, if we have a look at the next game, which I believe is the Jets and the Dolphins. Now, this was quite a good game. Went right down to the wire. A fair few points in it. First big point from this: no Brees Hall in this one. He was ruled out with a knee injury. And seemingly, he went to a timeshare between Isaiah Davis and Braylon Allen. And Braylon Allen, not as impressive as what Isaiah Davis was.
Yeah, I mean, it was very, very much identical. It's just Isaiah Davis had that score compared to what Allen didn't have. So we're talking like 11 carries for 43 for Braylon Allen and 10 for 40 for Isaiah Davis. So yeah, literally the only difference is the score. Um, so yeah, obviously Braylon got a bit more passing work, a bit more involved in the passing work compared to Isaiah Davis. But again, very similar, 4 for 38 or 3 for 27. So yeah, I don't know. I expected Braylon Allen to be pretty much a bell cow in this game. If I'm being honest with you, I thought he'd be a nice little plug and play, like as a flex spot or an RB2, depending on buys. And he was probably just a little bit disappointing. I think he was like 12 points in PPR, top of my head, which is okay. But I was looking for. I honestly thought he'd be like 20 plus. I thought he'd be an awesome handcuff to have at this point of the year.
Well, yeah, like I thought he probably not to the extent of what Charbonnet did at Seattle today, but of a similar variety because they're similar style players, real power backs that do still have explosive speed on them. But look, Isaiah Davis, he's not bad himself, so it makes sense to split the carries.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
Devontae Adams wound back the clock today, 9 catches, 109 yards, and a touchdown to the tune of just under 26 fantasy points. That was really good to see because a performance like that can get you into the fantasy playoffs because, you know, everything matters in this week, particularly if you're like 7 and 6 and you're banking on Devontae Adams to go big.
Yeah, I think all in all, if you started any of the Jets, you'd be a little bit nervous coming into the week. Tough matchup against the Dolphins secondary. They ranked pretty well. But yeah, Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams. Devontae Adams had his best game as a Jet so far. 9 for 109 and a touchdown is pretty big. But yeah, I was looking at this game going, oh shit, there's no running backs here. So you can't start Brees Hall. Rail Null's a plug and play. Aaron Rodgers has got rumors that he might get shut down, put onto IR, like those type of rumors. I'm thinking, fuck, Garrett Wilson and Devontae probably going to struggle. Rodgers cut shits, you know what I mean, like all that sort of crap. And they did the complete opposite.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's it was good to see. I mean, these two wide receivers and Garrett and Devontae are so talented that they should be getting fed and fed well. There's no reason why they shouldn't be when they're that talented.
And they were fed well today. I mean, although they lost, like the sense of this could blow up at some point it doesn't go away. But at least you got a score from them before this big blow up occurred. Like, because if you look through Devontae Adams, like it's just he had a good week last week, but it's been a bit lackluster for what we wanted from him, as it's also been for Garrett Wilson. So it's just nice to have a score going into the playoffs and say, if they don't shut down Aaron Rodgers, maybe we're onto something here, and we could still get something out of these guys in the playoffs. But I think the moment Rodgers gets shut down, it's probably the moment they wave the white flag. That's not disrespect at Tyrod Taylor, but there's still plenty of disparity between those two, Aaron Rodgers and Tyrod Taylor. On the flip side of things, though, for the first time, and I would presume is the entire season, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle both went off.
Yeah, they did, which was interesting because Devon A-Chain did not. He was the complete opposite of going off. I mean, 14 for 24 and a touchdown is not great numbers, saved by the touchdown, I suppose. But yeah, it felt like the pill was just getting thrown all the way out to Tyreek and Waddle all day. And it's back-to-back games now where Tyreek had a good score. So it begs to ask the question: Is he back for the fantasy playoffs, or is this just going to be I'll try and get you in, but out I go again? You know what I mean? So it's one to watch. But again, you start him every week. He invested a high capital into him or traded highly for him. So welcome to the year, Tyreek Hill.
I mean, Tyreek Hill, he's back. And we've got Houston, San Francisco, Cleveland, and New York. So week 18 doesn't matter for us, obviously. So Cleveland week 17 in the championship.
That's juicy.
It's juicy. Like, we'll talk about it later, but Denzel Ward was really good today, but it shouldn't matter all that much with the amount of motion they'll do with him. San Francisco, it depends on what the next 2 weeks look like, but that could still be juicy as well. And Houston's not perfect. Their secondary is pretty good, but it's not perfect. They're young players in the secondary.
If you get that far with Tyreek Hill in week 17, I reckon you're banking on a big score from him because that is such a juicy matchup. I don't care about the Browns secondary at all. They give up the most explosive plays in the league at the moment. So, Tyreek Hill, watch this space, but back-to-back weeks of solid numbers is definitely encouraging.
It is. And I've just been looking at the running back situation in Miami, and I'm not sure. I wouldn't rule them out of drafting a running back next year. Like, what they're missing a power back because, Devon A-Chain hasn't gone at 3.5 yards per carry for the last 3 weeks. Jalen Wright's not really is a Devon A-Chain backup. Raheem Mostert's cooked, and Jeff Wilson's certainly not the answer. So they're left with just 2 speedy backs. They haven't got a power guy. They need a complementary guy. In saying that, though, he's still RB6 on the year, mainly because he's catching, 6 or 7 passes a game and usually scoring a touchdown each game, whether it be a rushing touchdown or a receiving touchdown.
And look, they may go running back, but I don't think that's a massive need for them at the moment. I think they can go address that at free agency, get someone who's relatively cheap on like a 1 or 2 year deal and go from there. I don't think they'd probably use capital and high capital for a running back. They may use like a 5th or 6th rounder on a running back or something like that. That's possible. But generally, those guys aren't really relevant unless there's an injury that pops up or unless they just throwing the house down unexpectedly. So I'd be shocked if that happened. But Yeah, no, it's one of those things. I definitely agree. Devon A-Chain is definitely a smaller running back as well. He's tiny, and doesn't weigh much either. So, yeah, you can see why he would struggle with at being that power back. 'Cause that's not what he is at all. He's finding that gap, and once he finds that gap, he's out. You know what I mean? He's not one of those guys that if you need 5 yards out of him to card 5 yards, he's not that guy.
No, not consistently at the very least. Let's have a look at the next game here. Atlanta and the Vikings. It was a Kirk Cousins revenge game. Um,
Mm.
I mean, look, Kirk Cousins threw for 340 yards, uh, but we're now at 8 interceptions and 0 touchdowns in the last 4 games. It's time to bench him. It's time to bench him. You're at risk of not making the playoffs with what you've got a gun roster, and you're at risk of not making the playoffs if you don't make this switch.
Yeah, on paper, having 0-8 is not great at all, is it? It's
You
you
can't
can't
win
even
football
justify
games.
that. That you can't justify that at all. Um, but in the same token, do they care about what they're paying Kirk Cousins, or do they look at the future and go, well, Penix could be good. Do we try him and see what happens? I'd be shocked if they moved away from Kirk Cousins early, and well, not until the end of the year, should I say, when they're probably out of contention. I think they roll with Kirk Cousins until that time. But hey, I'm not opposed to a change either. I don't think that's the answer. It, I don't know what the answer is for him, but the answer is not turning the ball over. I'll give you a hot tip. But
Mm.
it's pretty grim, especially if you're a Kyle Pitts owner as well. It's like, is he droppable?
We said this last week. I think we both agreed he was, and
He
that
definitely
sentiment
is
hasn't
now.
changed in my mind.
Yeah, he definitely is now. Like, absolutely disgusting. What we've seen out of Kyle Pitts in the second half of the year, um, especially when he had a positive first half of the year. Um, yeah, it's pretty grim, isn't it? Like 1 for 14. That's you can't play that. But Darnell Mooney is probably the one who still continues to dominate. Like 6 for 142 today. Um, Absolutely incredible season that he's coming.
Hmm.
Did not really expect this, might I add. Not to this degree, anyway.
No, and he's the wide receiver 16 on the year in PPR leagues. His ADP, where was it? It was just here. I'll look for his ADP. Oh, here it is. Here we go. His ADP was 174 on Sleeper. Sorry, so like borderline last pick, verging on waivers. In most redraft leagues. So an amazing pickup because it's a high end wide receiver too in the end. But yeah, he's put together a remarkable season. I mean,
I think this
yeah,
is why
they
you
yeah, you go.
I think this is why you draft running backs early, is because you can always
Yeah.
find these wide receivers off the waiver wire or later in the drafts because there's plenty of them. So I think for drafts, and I think everyone plays like, not everyone, but I think a lot of players play like this in terms of try and prioritize running back first, and then try and obviously get some depth at wide receiver after that. Because yeah, you can, like, even Scary Terry this year, like he was going as a wide, like a round 6, round 7 target, something around there. He's the wide receiver 5 on the year, give or take.
Yeah.
So I think that's a classic example.
Yeah, and like you invest almost the 101 in CD Lamb. Now he's the wide receiver 7, so you got a reasonable return on that. But things can happen. Like wide receivers are so dependent on your quarterback that if there's an injury at quarterback, like their ceiling's gone. And it is for CD Lamb. Like he could still in PPR leagues, sure he could crack 20 points, but it's going to be very tough for him to do it in a standard league now because like the caliber of quarterback play has dropped significantly since Prescott got injured. Oh, and then of course you have Jerry Judy, the wide receiver 11 on the year, who no one even batted an eyelid at for most of this year,
Yeah.
until a quarterback change. Like they're just so fluid. Whereas the league is moving towards running backs again. Um, we've seen that, like, you invested high capital in running backs, you've probably done pretty well this year, unless their name's Christian McCaffrey. Uh,
Yeah.
like
Well,
Saquon,
even
Henry, Kamara, A Chain, all of them have done well.
Well, I'm funny you didn't mention this guy that we're on the game of Bijan Robinson, because Bijan had a big game again today. 22 for 92 and a touchdown and only 2 catches for 9 yards. But again, a serviceable game. And has been dominating since whenever we last spoke about this guy being the wide receiver one. Like, he just keeps on putting some great numbers together. And look, 92 yards on the ground, you're probably disappointed with that.
Yeah, well, look, this is, I believe, his lowest game outside of his Week 11 game against Denver. It's his lowest game since Week 5. Week 5. He's gone 20 plus in all of the other ones. He's having an absurd season. It'll be overshadowed because of Derrick Henry's, just Saquon Barkley's. Uh, Even on this podcast, definitely Kamara has overshadowed Bijan Robinson in terms of how much we've talked about him,
Yeah.
and A-Chain at times as well. But no, I think Bijan deserves a lot of praise because he has been super consistent, and just really an every down back. Because let's not look at this two ways. Tyler Algier is a more than serviceable running back. He's good. And to keep him in a very limited role like he has all season, you have to be very good. That's exactly what Bijan Robinson has been.
And I think this time of the year as well, it's very important to hold on to these handcuffs. Like Tyler Algier, this point of the year anyway, because if anything happens to Bijan Robinson, Algier is in and startable, and
Good.
suddenly he's very good and maybe like borderline RB1, RB2, sort of in between like top 12 to top 15. It's crazy.
I would okay. This could be a bit of an overreaction, but I'd treat him like an RB1 if anything happened to Robinson,
Oh, fuck
because
yeah.
the last time he saw any sort of significant volume, but he had 18 carries for 105 yards and a touchdown on 40% of the snaps. Like, the dude, in this team, he feasts.
Yeah,
So
and I think at this point of the year, it's very important, as I said, to hold on to these handcuffs. You can get rid of those guys on your bench that you think might break out, or you know what I mean, or who might score you 8-9 points a game. Michael Pittman's a classic example. We can get rid of him, and you know what I mean, and hold these high valuable handcuffs, because if one of these, as I said, if one of these running backs go down, like you saw Charbonnet today, for example, we'll talk about a bit later on. They miss any time, and these guys come in and dominate. So I think that's more important than holding a guy that might score 8 points a game.
and the perfect prime example of that is the 49ers. You go from Christian McCaffrey. Normally you'd go to Elijah Mitchell, but then he's out for the season. Then you went to Jordan Mason. He got injured. And then you went to Isaac Gurendo. We'll get to him, but he's now injured too. And all of a sudden you're looking at Patrick Taylor or Israel Abanikanda. One of them's going to be the RB1. I would roster both of them if possible.
Yeah.
But most likely you blew all your fab on Gurendo last week. So whoever didn't get Gurendo probably gets one of these two.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah.
On this same game as well, mate, on the Vikings end of things, this was just an absolute barrage by the Vikings, and Sam Darnold, he threw for 5 touchdowns, 347 yards. Probably like my favorite pick in our League of Insider. I think it was the last round or second last round. And yeah, such a fantastic pick. He's paid dividends and some, for sure. So Addison, Jefferson, they both ate today. I can't believe Jordan Addison's form in the last couple of weeks. He's been fantastic. Potential league winner, potential playoff contender if you're just outside the playoffs and you start him looking to get in, because he's been going bonkers. And Justin Jefferson hadn't had a score since week 7. And suddenly he popped up for 2 touchdowns. One of them was on probably the worst defense I have seen in a long time. Number 20 genuinely got lost. He had no idea where he was. I feel sorry for him because, mate, that graphic was just so bad.
And like, he's given the hardest job in the NFL, playing corner against Justin Jefferson. He'd make
Didn't even
anyone
know
look
what
like a
direction he
run-on
was.
fool. Yeah, fair enough too. I wouldn't have any clue. But like we spoke last week about how um, Sam Darnold, if he wanted to remain a starter next year, needed to step up the
This
big
is it.
game, and he's just had the big game. And we spoke about how Justin Jefferson's due, and sure enough, he delivered. Big game from him, big game from Darnold, and a solid game from the running back Aaron Jones, like 13 carries, 73 yards, and a touchdown on the ground. Uh, yeah, it was solid as always. He's had a solid season. He would have been drafted. You probably got the value that you drafted him for. Like his ADP was in that, you know, late fifth round, early sixth round. You're probably getting that sort of output from him right now.
He's an
Um,
RB2.
he's an RB2. I think that's good. Like where is he actually on the year? Who are we talking about? Aaron Jones. Yeah, He's the RB15 on the year.
Yeah, RB2.
So it's one spot below Brees Hall for context. Now I get Brees Hall's just missed a game, but you understand my sentiment here. Let's look at the Saints and the Giants. We can go through this one quickly. Derek Carr exits the game with a hand injury. So we might see Spencer Rattler back at the helm. What does this mean? It just means that Alvin Kamara will probably he go up from 5 catches to 8 catches. But in saying that, he's still not getting goal line carries because they gave it to Kendre Miller.
Yeah, back off IR, Kendre Miller. So if you're a dynasty owner, you've held him for, I guess, nearly 2 years now. That is positive signs, I reckon. Very positive signs because he's been nothing but injured for 2 years. So, um, if they decide they wanted to trade Kamara at any point, or if he goes down injured, at least you might think that Kendre can step up. So, look, good for him. But let's watch his space with Kendre moving forward. It's going to be grim if Derek Carr misses any time with this left hand fracture on his non-throwing hand. So let's see if he can play through it. But yeah, if they're leading to a backup again, it's pretty grim for anyone on that Saints roster because we saw this last time with Alvin Kamara. Really just couldn't get anything going with a dud QB and pretty much a stacked box.
Yeah, like we were expecting it to be, you know, a lot of passing volume or a lot of receptions, and it was, but there was nothing on the ground for him. You know, of course, he had 10 carries for 67 yards, 7 carries for 10 yards, and 13 carries for 40 yards in that span. One rushing touchdown. But in the same span, if you're in a PPR league, he'll still have his high floor because he had 8 targets and 5 catches, 7 targets and 6 catches, and 11 targets and 6 catches. So he will see plenty of passing volume still. So the floor and the playability of him it's a must start still. But yeah, his ceiling might be capped if Derek Carr's out.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially at any wide receivers that you've got at the Saints, which I don't think you start anyway. But yeah, just the whole offense will just disintegrate, really. On the Giant side of things, mate, it wasn't really that much better, if I'm being quite honest with you. Malik, what's his name?
Malik Neighbors.
Malik Neighbors paid through 2 injuries. And in our League of Inside, mate, I was up last night. It was about 11:45. I wasn't really that tired, but I was in bed ready to sleep, and I was thinking, "Fuck, do I bench Malik Neighbors for Gus Edwards?" I'm thinking, well, the outlook for Malik Neighbors looked really grim because they were thinking he'll play limited time and this and that. And I'm thinking, I can't start Gus Edwards. That could cost me the week if I do that. It didn't matter in the end, obviously, but Malik Neighbors was fine. I thought he was okay. He had like 12 or 13 points, I think it was in this game.
14.9, I believe.
Yeah, 14.9. So that's pretty good for a guy who's carrying 2 injuries. And Tyrone Tracy as well, who did have his fumbling issues in the last couple of weeks, did see a decent amount of snaps. I think it was over 80% from memory. So it looks like his role is back to normal.
And I'll tell you my favourite number, 10. That's how many
It was
targets Tyrone
69.
Tracy saw. Oh, well. Uh, but no, 10 targets for Tyrone Tracy in this game. Also, the rushing touchdown there. Yeah, sure. Was not great in the yards per carry department, but look, I'm in almost exclusively PPR leagues, so I'm happy to roll with if you're getting 5 catches on 10 targets and you're getting that amount of passing, uh, that target share in that offense, I'm happy with it.
I don't disagree, and yeah, so his role looks like it's sort of back to normal now. So, well, not even sort of, I'd say back to normal. So,
Hmm.
it's safe to say he's probably an RB2 now, and a safe RB2 option, depending on who's playing at QB. I don't know what you prefer at this point.
I prefer Daniel Jones back, but that's not going to happen.
No, that's not going to happen.
Um, well, let's talk about the Panthers and the Eagles now. We do have a problem.
Mm.
Bucky Irving got carted off. Not Bucky Irving, sorry. Jonathan Brooks got carted off with a knee injury, a non-contact knee injury. So, like, immediately you're thinking, well, poor bugger. Um, Probably missing another year if it's worst case scenario. Um,
Same knee
and,
too.
and same knee, so it probably is that, right? Well, well, yeah, it's bad. Whatever it is, it's not good. He's definitely done for this year. Probably, if it's bad, he misses a lot of next year again. Um, so
Mate, I'm no
realistically,
doctor. I'm
yeah.
no doctor, mate, but that's an ACL.
Okay, well there you go. It's an ACL. Let's just roll with that. Why not? It'll be confirmed anyway at some point. Let's talk as though it's an ACL. His trade value might have never been lower than what it is right now. You genuinely like he would have been drafted in your top 5 in a rookie draft this year or thereabouts. Maybe not top 5, top 10. Yeah, top 10. I like to refine that one, but I would be willing. Like, if I'm a manager of Jonathan Brooks, I'm seeing Chubba Hubbard there, and I'm like, why would they take the role away from him? Like, for starters, it's 12 months. So, am I willing just to have him sit on my injured reserve or my bench spot for 12 months again? And to be honest, he's not useful to me until 2026 now, at the earliest, September 2026, really. Um, so I'd be willing to trade him for whatever I can get. If someone offered me a late second for Jonathan Brooks, I'd take it.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that. Man, I took him at pick 14 for context in one of my rookie drafts, which I was sort of happy with at the time, but I sort of wasn't because the one pick before was Brian Thomas, and I definitely preferred Brian Thomas over him going into it. So that was a bit lackluster for me. I probably should have traded up and got him just to make sure, but oh well. But yeah, it's not great, mate. It's going to be ACL, I reckon. I'm no doctor, as I said, but I think that's going to be ACL, and that'll put him out for a year. That'll put him out for oh, pretty much the majority of next year as well, as you said. So he's not relevant to 2026. If you're in win now modes and you've got a spot there to sit on your bench, then sure. But tanking teams would probably want to take that on board and try and give like I don't know, late third, early second. A late second, early third, and stash him maybe and see what that comes up with. But I don't know, man. Two knees in 2 years is it's probably not a good sign for his durability.
No, and like even on a what's the right word? Physical profile as well. Like you're going to lose explosiveness from having the same knee rupture twice. That's just the way it goes, right? So just ask J.K. Dobbins. Like it took him after his first injury in 2020. It's taken him, the best part of 4 years to return to what he was. So realistically, the majority of his rookie contract probably is spent on the sideline. So
And we
is he
saw
even
J.K.
in?
Dobbins, but we saw
Sorry, you
J.K.
go.
Dobbins dominate before that knee injury. We haven't seen Jonathan Brooks dominate the NFL level yet. So
Yeah.
that's the difference in the J.K. Dobbins
Mm,
versus the Brooks debate, in my opinion. But yeah,
yeah.
it's grim. It's grim. It really is
It's great.
grim. Yeah. What do you say? um,
Poor fella. probably. That's about it.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, look, mate, in this game as well, I actually really liked Bryce Young. I thought he was calm in the pocket. I thought, again, he looks like he's confident, especially that play. Like, it was late in that last quarter, and he was deep in his own end zone. And
Oh, yeah.
and he could have gone down for a safety, but he didn't. He pushed through and made the right play and dimed up. I can't remember who it was. I think it was Coker
Leggett, I
maybe,
think.
or maybe it was Leggett, or maybe it was David Moore. I can't remember who it was, but hit him for like 20 yards. And mate, that was fantastic, I thought. So well done to Bryce Young. They'll roll with him moving forward for next year. They won't draft a QB. They shouldn't anyway if they do. And just keep rolling with and see what they can get out of him and give him another weapon too and see what he can do. Because I think this is a positive return.
Mm. And, like, if what's his name, Xavier Leggett comes down with that ball cleanly, he nearly did as well. He just had to hold on to it just a touch harder, and he doesn't drop that, and they've won the game, right? They beat Philly,
Yeah.
who are now 11-2.
Mm.
So it's like, you know, one, Legette's had two big time drops in the last 3 weeks, which isn't great. Yeah, you can probably forgive him because he's a rookie on this team, so naturally it's going to take a while. But no, I like Bryce Young in this one. I liked Saquon Barkley as well. I get he didn't have a massive game, but 20 carries, 124 yards, and a 2-point conversion gets the job done. Not matching the highs of some of the games he's had this year, but it's solid. Uh, but Jalen Hurts needs to start throwing the ball a bit more, I reckon.
Yeah, 102 or 108 passing yards, I think he had today, 21 attempts. But it doesn't feel like he needs to pass the ball for them to be really good. I mean, if you're an AJ Brown owner, you'd be cursing, sure. But AJ Brown's last 3, 4, 5 weeks have been pretty average too, Monday. They haven't really been anything too exciting. So yeah, if you're an owner coming into the postseason and you've got him, you'd be pretty nervous to start him. But again, you've paid up to get him, so you probably do it. So yeah, that's interesting. But mate, they don't have to pass the ball. I mean, 20 for 124 for Saquon, Jalen Hurts 8 for 59 and a receiving and a touchdown himself. You know what I mean? Like that's over 200, not over 200 yards, nearly 200 yards on the ground, and their defense gives them shorter fields to work with too. So they're generally always going to be in field goal range.
Look, I mean, nothing changes for me. I'm still going to start the key guys at Philly. I am interested in Grant Calcaterra as someone who has a share of Dallas Goddard, who is now just about done for the regular season. I did turn to him as my fill-in tight end. He did okay. However, that touchdown saved his week or day, I should say rather. But I need to see something more from him if he's going to be my answer at tight end to replace Goddard. I'd rather just play the waiver wire lottery and just stream it from week to week after seeing that.
Oh, yeah, I suppose. 3 for 16, but yeah, had the touchdown. So, I don't like that lottery.
Well, I mean, you're not going to do much worse than what you've got if you just stay with him, are you?
You know what you need to do if you're gonna start, then you might as well put money on them as well for a anytime touchdown because they'd be paying some decent odds in that too. So you're gonna eat or you're gonna be disappointed. You might as well financially benefit from it too.
Let's have a look at the Steelers and the Browns. We've got 27-14 in favor of Pittsburgh. No George Pickens in this one. He was ruled out late with a hamstring injury. As a result, not much in the air today for Russell Wilson. Still got to a solid total because of 2 passing touchdowns, but only 158 passing yards. Pat Frymouth was a big beneficiary of no George Pickens there. Saw 3 catches, 48 yards, and a touchdown. In the wide receiver room, nothing much was doing there. So they relied a bit on Najee Harris, who did punch in one for a touchdown. But yeah, pretty quiet in this game, just as a whole, to be honest.
Yeah, it was. You're not wrong. And I was a bit disappointed that Pickens missed, but I understand why. They played the cautious route with Pickens holding a hammy injury. They're 10-2. Oh, they were 10 and sorry, they're 9-3 coming into this game. Obviously 10-3 with the win, but they're looking at beyond week 14. They're looking at playoffs themselves. And if they lose Pickens for 4 weeks due to them just risking him in this game, which they'll probably get a win anyway, is probably the safe option and probably the right option to make. So, but for us fantasy owners and plebs out there, that hurts for any owners of George Pickens because he had potential to go big in this game if he played.
Yeah, it is a shame, but you know, I think even if you did have George Pickens, like sure, you missed this week's score, but if he was to play and get injured in this one, your season's nearly over with the he's almost certainly a starter, and wide receiver depth is at a premium right now. Everyone's just going down injured or just not seeing the ball unless you're a mainstay in your lineup. Now, I'll quickly touch on David Njoku. He had 12 targets, 7 catches, 42 yards, and a touchdown. He was Jameis's primary target outside of Jerry Judy. Uh, I mean, he saw way more targets than Jerry Judy, but yet again, we have this consistent tight end who he had a down week a few weeks back, but outside of that, he has been very solid in the Jameis Winston era.
Yeah, he has been, mate. He has been. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I thought this would be the case. He'd be at least consistent, but now Jerry Judy's making a case of being consistent himself too. So obviously, there's no Tillman in this one. He missed his second straight with a concussion. But yeah, Jerry Judy 5 for 64 and a touchdown. Where has this Jerry Judy been? He sort of popped up when he first started playing when he came to the league, went away for a while, and now Jameis has unlocked like some sort of like deep desire of Jerry Judy wanting to play football again or something. Like it just didn't sound like he was keen a year ago. Playing in Denver, it looked like he was disinterested. You know what I mean? It's maybe what sparked him was Steve Smith's body calling him. Maybe that got him going as well. But good to see, mate. He was talented coming into the league, so he's starting to really pay dividends for sure. And yeah, as you said, mate, David Njoku is probably the safest tight end, maybe outside of McBride, who again had an off day today, but maybe he's the safest tight end in the game at the moment.
Yeah, well, it'd be hard to justify a case against him right now, but there is one man who did have a quieter day at tight end today, and that was Brock Bowers for the Las Vegas Raiders. He got out targeted at tight end by Michael Mayer. Interesting. Michael Mayer today, who had 7 catches for 68 yards, in comparison to Bowers' 3 catches for 49 yards. This doesn't mean anything to me. It's just it's a shame that in a game where I thought he would have feasted, that he didn't see much action. But I attribute that to the loss of Aidan O'Connell for the rest of the season. He has suffered an injury. He is gone. And who starts? Desmond Ridder, the ghost of Christmas past, is back in the starting lineup for the Las Vegas Raiders. They are 2-11. They will finish the season 2 for 15 for sure. And it would make sense that Michael Mayer takes over at tight end now that, because it's the third string quarterback, you may as well throw all the passes to the second string tight end. That's what makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's going to make sure Brock Bowers doesn't go down with a season-ending injury and probably even long-term rather than that, because he is like the franchise at the moment, bar their first-round pick that they're hoping is going to be an absolute superstar, because that's what they need at this franchise. They need a QB urgently. I thought O'Connell was actually pretty good when he was playing in this game. I thought he was fine. But, yeah, I don't know. He's now out. So he might be back up again. But, mate, there's a guy that I want to talk about in this game who, again, put in a decent performance. And I'm feeling very sincere. But the old Sincere McCormick 15 for 78, 5.2 yards per carry, and 2 from 11 on the two catches for 11 yards on the ground. Yeah, not a bad performance from Sincere again.
I mean, he's absolutely pushed Amir Abdullah out of the RB1 spot with Madison and Zamir White out. Now, the questions again, same question we had last week. Is he actually the team's RB1?
Yes.
Well, are you confident he has overtaken Madison and Zamir White, or are you hopeful that he's overtaken Madison and Zamir White?
No, I'm now confident.
All right. Well, okay. And that's what I want to hear because some zig when others zag. And instead of rostering Isaac Gurendo, I went and rostered Sincere McCormick because I knew that wouldn't cost me anything because everyone just flocks to the 49ers running backs.
The only thing is when Madison comes back, he may get the passing work, but that's just going to affect Abdullah, I suppose.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about genuine lead rushers, I think that's the old Sincere at the moment. Yeah, and you can't move away from him.
No. And what do you gain from moving away from him? Nothing really. Uh, Best case scenario, Sincere's your RB1 next year, right? It's a bit like Zamir White. Once they shut down Josh Jacobs, you may as well just give the bloke a go, like they did with
Mm.
Zamir White last year. You may as well give Sincere a go. Um, See what you've got. Now, it could still be a bit misleading as we saw from Zamir White, but you may as well give it a go. Just see,
Yeah,
do you have a genuine rusher here? That could that could be a sustainable RB1 next year. You very well could. It's happened before. So
yeah.
I'm with you. I don't see why they move off Sincere McCormick, but I am aware that this is the Las Vegas Raiders and common sense goes out the window.
Well, I'm just looking at the running back usage here. It was 30-8 in early down work for Sincere, right? It was 4-1 Sincere's way in the goal line, and short yardage work. It was 7-0. So all those charts that I'm reading there just show me that it's going to be Sincere's to the end of the year. So he would be such a top waiver wire addition coming into the playoffs. Is he worth a stash on your bench? Absolutely. Because he's the RB1.
Yeah, yeah. He's well and truly in the conversation there. Um, we did have a bit of a dilemma with Bucky Irving. Now, obviously, he came into the week as questionable due to that back and the hip injury that he had, and that flared up during the game, causing him to be ruled out and ruled done at 4 carries for 3 yards and a catch for 15 yards. And then his replacement stepped up, Rashad White, 17
Mm.
carries, 90 yards, a touchdown, 2 catches, 19 yards, and a receiving touchdown as well. If you're a Bucky Irving owner, are you concerned?
Oh, fuck yeah. Shit, yeah.
Mm.
Now, let's monitor the situation, obviously. Let's not rule him out because we don't know ourselves how long he's going to be out for. Is it going to be a week, 2 weeks, a month, IR? Like, we don't know what's going on here. But in saying that, if you're a Rashad White owner and you've held him for the whole year, and you would have, because you've invested such high draft capital into him, you wouldn't have just dropped him to the waiver wire. You'd be licking your lips this time of the year.
Yeah. Like, he's not meant to be a league winner because he's meant to be a consistent running back where you draft him in the late third round, but he could still well be a league winner.
Yeah, and like in one of the leagues I missed playoffs in, man. Yeah, I did. I drafted him in the third round. I thought he'd be fine. Well, it was late third round, but all the RBs went early, and I was left with the old Rashad White, and he had his games when he played. He had his games, but all in all, pretty disappointing as a whole year. If you look over the whole year, but mate, if you've got him now, he's going to pay dividends, I reckon, because if Buck Irving misses any time, Rashad White's done it before. He's a 3-down back. He can receive goal line carries. He can punch him in. So, yeah, watch this space.
I would still go and just quietly roster Sean Tucker as well if you own Rashad White, particularly if Bucky's out for a little while, just because, you know, we've seen that if anything happens to, um, any one of Bucky Irving or Rashad White, like Sean Tucker's done it before. He went bonkers in that game that he saw any sort of volume in. So just keep that up in your back pocket because Sean Tucker's good. Um, let's look at the next game here, and we can look at this one pretty quickly, just because we're under time. And it's the Jags and the Titans. Both teams 3-10 now. The Jags won. It was a battle of who could play worse today. Mac Jones threw 2 picks and 220 yards. Will Levis, yeah, he copped a shoulder injury, but he barely did a thing. Um, in fact, undisputedly in my mind, best player today was Tony Pollard with 21 carries for 102 yards. Still, the Titans didn't win, but he did keep, uh, almost single-handedly keep them in the game. Um, as I say, that's the only thing I'm interested in this one, maybe outside of Brian Thomas.
Yeah, I agree. And look, he didn't have the score as well, Tony Pollard, I don't believe, just yardage. So in a week matchup, they see each other again. I think it's week 17 they see each other again. So you've seen what Pollard can do on the ground against a weak second or weak run defense as such, or just a weak defense, let's say, for argument's sake. So yeah, he can do it again. 10-6, they fucking boring as.
Yeah, I didn't see much of that game, even though mainly because one, I was watching Red Zone, and two, there was nothing worthwhile showing on Red Zone because one touchdown the entire game. Um,
I mean, in red
see,
zone, they usually
yeah,
show teams in the red zone. They were never in the red zone. So
yeah, exactly right. Couldn't have put it better myself. Now Seahawks Cardinals. This was big in the context of the NFC West. The Seahawks won today, and they did. They would go up and have a 2-game lead over second place in the division. If the Rams lost, now we'll get to that, but I believe the Rams, believe they are 7-6 now, so it's only a 1-game advantage. But they do now have a 2-game advantage of what was their main rivals, the Arizona Cardinals, mainly because they swept the Arizona Cardinals. Now that was off the back of Zach Charbonnet having the best game of his career comfortably. 22 carries, 134 rushing yards, 2 rushing touchdowns, as well as 7 catches for 59 yards. That put him, I believe, as the RB1 on the week, and it has. Uh, if you stash Zach Charbonnet all this time, you will be laughing. You'd be laughing.
yeah, the carb on it was amazing, wasn't he? Set career highs in pretty much everything. We're talking carries, rushing yards, receptions, receiving yards, touchdowns, I believe as well. Yeah, career highs and everything. And as I said before, Matt, we're talking about high valued RB handcuffs here, and he's definitely one of them. So the only downside to that is they reckon Kenny Walker's back next week. So look, if you're a Kenny Walker owner, perfect. If you're a Zach Charbonnet owner, you're probably cursing, going, "I want Charbonnet to start and play and keep playing because he's very good." And he is.
Yeah,
He showed why he was
he's good.
pretty much a high pick. When was it? Last year, the year before, whenever it was.
Last year, yeah.
And yeah, but mate, yeah, just amazing.
Yeah, he's a good player. And if he was not behind Kenneth Walker, who's a gun running back, he would be an RB1 on comfortably 70% of the teams in the NFL. It's just, he's a victim of where he got drafted to because he's a very good player and someone I'd be quietly targeting in Dynasty because I believe his contract probably finishes soonish. At least 1 year, maybe 2 remaining. And as soon as that contract finishes, I'd be shocked if he stays in Seattle as the backup there, particularly with his talent. So you could have an RB1 just sitting there stewing, ready to cook as soon as he leaves Seattle. Jackson Smith and Jigba, again, continuing this breakout season. I believe he's in the top 10 wide receivers this year. I believe, let me just confirm that. Yes, he is. He's the wide receiver 5 this year. Particularly when he started pretty slowly as well. Like it's been the last 6 or 7 weeks where he's really taken off. But he's arrived well and truly now.
Yeah, he has, mate. He absolutely has. Just a dominant stretch of games as well. I don't know. Well, has he passed DK Metcalf on the pecking order there? It's fair to say he probably got a good sort of argument to sway either way, I suppose. I mean, DK Metcalf will obviously still see his big games for probably the last 3 weeks, 4 weeks of the year. But yeah, Smith and Jigba was a first round pick, mate. Was it 2 years ago? I think it was. So,
Mm.
yeah, I don't mind it at all. He's 11 points in PPR in each of those the last 6 games, I think it is. So,
Yeah, he's been on fire. Um,
yeah,
you know, he was coming into the draft 2 years ago. He was considered the best wide receiver prospect by far in that class. And he fell to the 20th pick just because everyone was desperate for defensive pieces because it was a strong class that year in that regard. So they went after that, and Smith and Jigbo landed in the laps of a team that didn't really need a wide receiver at the time, but you take the best player available,
you
always.
do,
Uh,
you do.
and he's been it's taken a year. Last year was quiet, didn't live up to the expectations, but this year he's exceeded the expectations because everyone tempered them after last year, but he's come out and reached his potential and had a massive second year breakout.
You might not be done yet either.
Yeah, imagine he's got something up his sleeve in the playoffs, I reckon. He's got Green Bay and Minnesota, two uh, defenses which concede a lot, two wide receivers. I think there's a big game in one of these two. Uh, on the Cardinals side of things, we can be quick there. There wasn't too much in this one. James Conner was good. 18 carries, 90 yards, 4 catches, 32 yards, and a touchdown. Trey McBride was solid, 7 catches on 14 targets for 70 yards. So still, again, quite consistent. Not the 12 catches that he had been sort of rocking up the last few weeks, but overall, a good game from him. Anything you wanted to add to this one?
Not really, but Trey McBride, as you said, nice game. But I think he had a donut at half time, and then that whole second half was pretty much 7 for 70. So that was interesting, I thought, out of that game. Considering we're saying he's had 12 catches and whatnot in the last few games. But yeah, all in all, it was a bit weird. Michael Wilson had that receiving touchdown to start the game, and then saw 1 catch for the remainder of the game. Marvin Harrison still is getting accustomed to the league, double teams, etc., etc. 4 for 49, so that's nothing too exciting for fantasy. But yeah, I'm excited for Marvin Harrison's future, but it won't be this year.
No, I think he'll follow the Jackson Smith and Jigbo career path. It's very similar, sort of. It's screaming that way. Bears Niners. Now, this was a massive blowout game in favor of San Francisco off the back of Isaac Guerrero, who, when I was watching this game, I was thinking that he would be our player of the week, but he's not for obvious reasons. He, of course, left this game with an injury, a foot sprain. We don't know how much time he'll miss, uh, but safe to say Patrick Taylor needs to be rostered. Uh, not not a sentence I was expecting to say in 2024, but here we are. Patrick Taylor, 7 carries, 25 yards, and a touchdown. I don't know at what point we stop rostering the 49ers running backs because at some point we're down to the RB5 on their roster. Like, we're at a point where they're probably not that good anymore. But just because they only go with one back, they don't split carries.
It's just a great scheme with a solid offensive line too. So I reckon that even put you in there, mate, and you probably score a couple of touchdowns as well. So there's still a hope for you at some point that you could be able to make it. But yeah, no,
Skip Bayless would do well.
nah, that's too far. But yeah, it's weird, man. It's weird. And again, you go and pick up Taylor. What does he cost you on the waiver wire? Probably dump all your fab onto him as well. Let's be honest, you probably do it. It's probably a full dump depending on how long Guerendo's out for. Now, if they think Guerendo's back next week, then obviously you hold your fab. But outside of that, if you're out for 2 weeks, that's a full dump again.
Yeah, it's a crazy time to be a running back on the San Francisco roster. Like, Is it Patrick Taylor? Is it Keyshawn Vaughn? I've definitely butchered the pronunciation of that.
Okay,
Is
Sean.
it Israel Abanikanda? Like, it could be any of these guys. We think
Yeah.
it's Patrick Taylor, but let's follow the order of progression. If it's Patrick Taylor, who do you roster next? Keyshawn Vaughn. If something happens to Patrick Taylor, who do you roster next? Israel Abanikanda, finally. So we're talking Vaughn as the RB6, and then Abanikanda as the RB7 for the 49ers.
I
That's
will say,
ridiculous.
just to move on to your point of the Niners, um, Juwan Jennings, aka Brandon Ayuk, I still think that's him in disguise. He is becoming a solid flex play for the remainder of the year under a probably going to be a pass heavy Brock Purdy for the remainder of the year too. So, I'm confident to be starting Juwan Jennings. If it's not in the snow and it's not with a backup QB, this guy is fire. So another 2 touchdowns today, 90 yards to go with that, 7 catches. Yeah, 25 points, I think it was in PPR, or close to it, or maybe even higher. My maths isn't that great at the moment. It's probably higher. He's a flex play for the remainder of the year. I'm solid. He's just solid, and I think he deserves it too.
Yeah, 28 points for him today, and he's the wide receiver one there. That's now affirmative, because Tebow Samuel, again, he's ruined me in the League of Insight this year. Just, he's undone all of Saquon's good work and what is otherwise a very ordinary and injury-riddled roster that I had. So I don't know what he's going to see. He's not going to get re-signed. That's the first thing. The second thing, I don't know what contract he's going to see next year, but it sure as hell won't be a big one.
I'm certain he's under contract next year.
Is he under contract?
I'm certain he is.
Okay. Well, if he's under contract, then no worries. But he could actually, well, he could still be traded. That's probably
He
the
could be
more likely
traded.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he could be. On the Bears side of things, mate, it was pretty grim. Now the offensive line was very shaky for pretty much the whole game. I don't know how many times Caleb Williams got sacked, but it was ridiculous. And yeah, there wasn't really anything I really loved. I mean, Dunze had the 2 receiving touchdowns, which was nice. DJ Moore had 6 of 49. Yeah, look, a bit of volume there, but not much on the like receiving yards as such. So again, the shaky Bears offense is just a bit of a circus at the moment. And the next 3 games we've got the Vikings, Lions, and Seahawks. So they had a pretty good game against the Vikings last time round. And they actually had a half decent game against the Lions as well. And there's 2 secondaries they can sort of get into it and get some decent passing yards. So we'll see what they can do in the next 2 games. But again, you have no confidence going into these games. What the Bears can produce week in, week out.
Yeah. You could make a case for a Dunze, but I'm pretty happy just to let them go. And now there's not much there for them for the rest of the year. Bills, Rams. Now, I've been saving this, but undoubtedly he's our player of the week, Josh Allen.
He's a bad man. He's a bad.
A very, very good game from him. In fact, not just very good, record breaking. The highest score in the quarterback position of all time. 22 completions on 37 attempts, 342 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, 10 rushes for 82 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns, 51.88 fantasy points. It's an incredible stat line. 6 touchdowns he had individually, and they still couldn't win.
Yeah. I believe he broke the record of most. I think it was 3-3 passing touchdowns and rushing touchdowns as well. I think that was the record in terms
I
of.
think he's the only guy that's ever done it.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, monster game. What else can you say? I mean, he was the 101 in the draft for this exact reason, because he can fling the ball to anyone, and he can also rush him in, do it all himself. So there's a reason why he went the 101, or he was the 101, should I say? So, yeah, pretty nuts. And mate, in one QB leagues, you can make a case that he could be a first round pick next year as well, which
Oh,
is very.
yeah, you wouldn't rule it out, would you?
He wouldn't. So, pretty crazy. And Murray Cooper, did he play today?
He did. In fact, he saw a lot of targets. 14 targets, 6 catches, 95 receiving yards. Coach got called up to play.
Good to see.
And coach benefited everyone else as well. Mac Hollins, 4 catches, 57 yards and a touchdown. Khalil Shakir, 5 catches, 106 yards and a touchdown. And even, third string running back Ty Johnson, 2 catches, 55 yards and a touchdown. It's just everyone had a go today, except of
James
course,
Cook.
except of course James Cook, who, in my opinion, it's very rare you get the player of the week and the bona fide scrub of the week in the same game. But James
This
Cook
man was a
is
bona fide scrub. He can't play. No disrespect whatsoever, but I'm sorry to tell everybody the truth.
a bona fide scrub. When your team scores 42 points and you're the RB1, you don't go and score under 5 fantasy points. It just doesn't happen. It's a crap game from him. You'd be spewing if you owned him. Uh, and I know a lot of successful teams would have.
I will say
I tell
though,
you what, though. Yeah, yep.
James script was not in his favour.
No, but like, still, you would have thought he found his way to have a few more catches or just be more involved. Like,
I mean,
seriously,
six
he
carries,
barely
six
touched the damn ball.
6 carries is not on him though. That's on the
Oh
play caller
no, yeah, it is, but
and game script.
oh,
But yes,
you're very
bonafide,
polite.
but bona fide scrub, because you've expected this guy to come into the week as probably an RB1, and he's put in RB4 numbers.
At best.
Yeah.
At best. This week he finished as the RB35.
Yeah.
So it is RB4 numbers. There you go. I tell you what, though, you were talking about first round pick for Josh Allen next year. In my mind, this guy is undoubtedly a first round pick, maybe even a top 5. Puka Nakua, 5 carries, 16 yards, a rushing touchdown, 12 catches on 14 targets for 162 receiving yards and a touchdown. He's not getting enough praise because he missed a fair bit of this year, but he's had a better year than last year.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he has missed a few games as well due to health, which probably is putting back a little bit. But mate, this guy, if there was any question if he can't play with Cup or not, well, he can. He can be the 1A, 1B with Cooper Cup, because it's pretty damn special what he can do. But this was a big game for the Rams, mate. This kept them afloat, kept them alive. They had to score 44 points to win, but they found a way. Right, Stafford was pretty good. Kyron Williams was fantastic, I thought. 2 rushing touchdowns and 29 carries and 87 yards. I thought he was fantastic. And again, Blake Corum, I've rostered him in our League of Insight. He's just sitting there on me bench. Another one of those handcuffs that we talk about. Just high value handcuffs. He's just sitting there ready to go if anything ever happens to Kyron Williams. Inserted straight into the lineup, and I think he'd be fine.
Oh, for sure. He's as talented as Kyron Williams. And I think Kyron would be very cautious about getting injured because Blake Corum could take his job. He's good enough. I don't think there's much of a gap between those two in reality. But right now, Kyron has the job and he's doing a hell of a job. So,
Absolutely.
again, he's just a touchdown machine. You wouldn't bench him against anyone, I don't think, at this point. He'll score against anyone as well. So I'm all in for Kyron Williams there. The Chargers and the Chiefs, the final game that we'll look at tonight. Justin Herbert, you know, he copped a knock, but he came back into the game. He was okay. Uh, but not much really got going on this side of things. Obviously, it doesn't help not having Lad McConkey, but nothing standing out for me. What's standing out for you?
The Chiefs getting away with another one.
Dark magic. Dark magic,
Another
man.
one. It's crazy. It's crazy. But hey, a doink that goes through. Bloody hell. That's what stood out for me, mate. That was probably the thing that probably hit me the most. But Pacheco has, I don't know, is he starting to get going? 14 for 55. Did see majority of the early down work. Did see the short yardage work. Third down work was dominated by P. Ryan. 2-minute drill was also dominated by P. Ryan. But I don't think I saw any goal line carries in this game, I don't believe. So it's hard to say who gets goal line carries moving forward, if that's Kareem Hunt or if it's Pacheco. But yeah, maybe that's just another game of Pacheco getting reps into him, and maybe next week is the week where he starts to get going. Keep in mind the Chargers' run defense is pretty good too.
And he's got Cleveland next week, who, like, they're a solid team. They're a solid defensive line, rather. But I think he could still break out for a big game or have a big game as a whole uh, against that defense. So I'd probably bring Pacheco back into my starting lineup next week, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting because look, you think that for the remainder of the year they've got the Browns, Texans, Steelers. What Chiefs will probably have a favorable game script, maybe. So that means there's a bit of work there for Pacheco to use with that work, but I just don't know what we're going to get out of him. He's not really, apart from that one play last week, he's not really ripping off those big plays. So, maybe it's just going to be a slow grind till next year, and that's when he starts dominating. But we'll see how that goes. On the other side of things, mate, I want to mention the Gus Bus. I think he had his first rushing touchdown on the year. Maybe second.
He had one second, yeah.
So, the Gus Bus is primarily getting all the goal line work. It was 3-0 to anyone else. Early down work was nearly 50-50 with him and Vidal. And Vidal saw third down work and 2-minute drill work. So, all in all, mate, it almost feels like it's a 50-50 split between Gus Edwards and Vidal at this point.
Yeah, it's not getting the blood pumping, that's for sure. I'm not really excited or enthused by that backfield in any way, shape, or form. Look, I think we've just about looked through all the games now. Obviously, you got tomorrow's primetime game, but yeah, a very eventful week. Good chatting, and we will see you on Thursday.